Before we get to the interview, I'd like to tell you about a special offer to subscribe to the Business Observer, which covers essential business news in Florida every day online and every Friday with a print edition. Unlock every Business Observer article on our website and app for only $1 a week. Sign up today and stay up to date with all the business news you need to be better at business. Go to businessobserverfl.com/subscribe. Hello, and welcome to the Business Observer from the Corner Office podcast. I'm Mark Gordon, managing editor of the Business Observer. Today's guest is Tampa Bay tech and hospitality entrepreneur, Chon Nguyen. Chon, thanks for joining us.
Thanks for having me, Mark. Appreciate it. Glad to be here.
Well, I'm looking at your bio, and I know there's restaurant, there's hospitality. I'm like, a lot of cooks in the kitchen, but I think it's more just a busy kitchen, right? I mean, because you got all these things going on. So just kind of give us an overview of what your enterprise is and what businesses you have now.
Yeah, my background is in technology. So I've always started in technology and still have technology businesses. So I have two technology businesses. One is Newgentek. We're a managed IT services provider and systems integrator. So we do a lot of, in addition to managed IT services, we do a lot of workplace technology, audio, video, infrastructure services for companies around the country. I also have a software business called Fusionprep that I co-founded with a partner, and we provide a digital kitchen solution for multi-unit restaurants, and it powers all of their back of house and kitchen operations. So it manages their recipes, their training, their food safety and compliance tools, and sort of reports to all of the managers on that, and kind of keeps the wheels turning for multi-unit restaurant kitchens. And then 8 years ago now, I partnered with two guys, Farrell Alvarez and Ty Rodriguez, who had a restaurant in Seminole Heights that I was a frequent customer of, and always told them that I would love to get involved. And so we partnered on that second restaurant, and then I ended up becoming a partner in their first restaurant. And then we've done a handful of restaurants since. Right. We opened number 7 and 8, and we have 9 and 10 under development now. So kind of moved from technology to restaurant technology to restaurants themselves. And so it's been a journey, but sort of all in the same constellation of kind of restaurants and technology. So,
and that's gotten really big. So you have 7 and 8 locations now, and 9 and 10 under development.
Yes. Yeah.
That's great. And I love how, it's an old saying, right? You were a customer before you were an owner, right? So
yeah.
That's pretty cool. And so I want to talk a little bit about sort of your career and your challenges, but take us even further back. Where did you grow up? And, you do all these entrepreneurial things. Do you have that in your background? Were your parents, or, what were the influences on your life that led to this career?
Yeah, my dad always had businesses. He was in the car business, so he kind of had his own small automotive lot, and then he was a general manager at some auto dealerships. So that business is at least at the time. I hope it has changed. I don't really have too many friends in there now, but it was very much like restaurants, it's very hard on, to raise a family. And so he was working weekends but super passionate about what he did. I think that was probably my biggest takeaway from him, is watching him build something that he was passionate about and enjoyed doing. My mom was in healthcare, but she was always super supportive of what I did. And they could tell early on that technology was an interest of mine. And they really worked hard to make sure that I had the tools that I needed. I always had a new computer, and then when I got to high school, when I was 16, there was at the time I was one of the youngest to get what they call an MCSE, Microsoft Certified Systems Engineer certification. But I got it over the summer when I was in high school. It was like 6 exams to get the designation, and then I started doing some consulting for some people that my dad knew, and helping them with their infrastructure. I'd work at the Y, and then we kind of do that at night. And so, yeah, that was, I'd say supportive parents, nurturing the entrepreneur,
Yeah.
and then, yeah, just kind of moved it along.
Well, you had it in you too. I mean, 16 years old that you're, building or, working on that computer system as opposed to, the cliche or the stereotype of 16-year-olds playing video games. You were kind of making the games or making the system that makes the games.
Yeah, I was, the people that I surrounded myself with were much older and were, in very different places in their career, but it was good to, to have that early start, I think was pretty helpful, I think.
And so the IT company, was that your first venture, out there doing it, right? That's what started it.
Yeah, I graduated. I didn't go to college. I graduated from high school and was kind of doing some consulting that people my dad knew. And then I took a job at Circuit City, which is not around anymore, but
Sure.
large national retailer. We were on commission. So a friend of mine that like graduated the year before was like, you got to come work here. We were 18 and he's like, I made $65,000 last year selling extended warranties. And
Yeah, that's wild.
so I did that. And then, but I would sell the people their computer systems. And then they would say, hey, I have a business that this is going into. And do you know anyone that can set it up? And they weren't doing services at the time. And so on my nights off, that's kind of how I really built the business. And at the time, it was just like break fix IT work. There was no, what we call managed services today. That didn't exist at the time. It was just sort of, ad hoc hourly services, which was, great. But it really didn't get scale until some years in.
Yeah. So it was like Geek Squad way before
That's
Geek
it.
Squad. And for our younger listeners in our audience, Circuit City really was like, they were right there with Best Buy. I mean, that was like the 1-2. It was like the Coke and Pepsi of sort of tech, big box stores, right? I mean, they were a big entity.
Very high touch. I mean, their slogan was "Where service is state of the art," and the training was incredible. I mean, I still credit a lot of the sales knowledge that I had, and really? Even warehousing, and I learned a lot there in the short amount of time that I had. They had a really great. It was unfortunate that they weren't able to make it work, but they were a great organization.
And so, all right, so the IT company, what have been some of sort of the tipping points? Customer service, right? Like you're doing that really in all your businesses because that your end user. And so what were some of the tipping points in terms of customer service or reaching that market that you now have that, hey, we got a legit business here?
It was, scale, but like the whole notion of like the one man shop to scaling. There was a book called The E-Myth that I read, that Entrepreneur's Myth, which kind of walked you through building processes and systems and treating it like you are larger than you are, and building those systems so that when you do hire someone, it makes it easier. And so, that was sort of a light switch moment. Yeah, I read a book, I guess it was sort of it was a foreshadowing what I would eventually get into. But Setting the Table is a book by Danny Meyer, which is another
Danny Meyer's book, sure,
hospitality book. And I read that when I owned my computer business, and that really, gave me a lot of informed kind of how I thought about service and what service could look like in this business. And so I started doing little touches for customers. I actually sent that book to a lady that I fixed her computer, and then we're still friends today. And she still tells that story about, you were 20 years old and sent me a, handwritten note to thank me. And that was just, really unique and different. So the hospitality piece of it, again, was what sort of started a little earlier than what it ended up happening. But that was definitely part of my journey.
Yeah, that's really interesting. And just a segue for a little bit, because you talked about a couple of books, E-Myth and Danny Meyer. Those are really key, important business books. But we talked for a minute, just before we got on, that even when you're going away, you're on vacation or whatever, you're not totally turned off and you like to read business books. What else do you like to read, or anything that you're reading now that sort of stands out in your mind?
I do a lot of podcasts. I mean, when I say I go for a walk every night. If I'm not with my wife walking, I'll have headphones in and consuming. I'm listening to podcasts when I drive. But Tim, I like listening to other entrepreneurs, How I Built This, Tim Ferriss's podcast, Diary of a CEO. Anything, I sort of scan those and then look at the guests and see if I think I'll get an important takeaway. Will Guidara, Unreasonable Hospitality is sort of the next iteration, is like the next setting the table that has really done well, and he's on the speaking circuit now. But that was a great one. I've shared that book with my leadership team. We gave it to all new employees at our new restaurants that we just opened. And so, I mean, really anything business related, I try to consume.
And obviously, shameless plug, obviously the From the Corner Office podcast. I know that you and I connected at an event in Tampa probably over a year ago now. And then I think we reconnected on LinkedIn because you had seen one of the episodes or listened or saw a link to it or something.
I did. Yeah. I can't remember who it was now, but I especially love local things. I mean, to me, I think there's so many stories to tell, and you end up, bumping into somebody at a networking event and learning about them. And you don't get the opportunity a lot to sit and talk with someone for an hour like you do, which, is really cool. And so, I do listen to a lot of local stuff too. There's a couple of local podcasts that I like too.
Excellent. Good. And so going to the restaurant side, so you're a customer, you like it, and obviously you've been aware of the industry, you've done these things. What's going through your head, maybe your wife, your family, that's a big risk, right? You're not just a, casual partner. You went in and now you're growing. So take me through that time when you first started that, or first got into that, I should say.
Yeah. Part of what attracted me to why I was a fan was because I saw something unique and special in what they were doing. And I had spent in my IT business, we work with a lot of chain restaurants. And then in the software side, we work with a lot of chain restaurants. So at the time when I got involved with them, I had probably opened, because of the size of the business, I was probably opening at one point like 20, 25 restaurants a year, chain restaurants. I would fly, behind the team and
really
on things. And so I would watch that whole process happen. And I really had a front row seat to a lot of the chains that you know and love around Tampa. And they do, they have a great offering and are experts at sort of scaling these brands. But our initial Rooster and the Till was extremely small. They were cooking on induction burners. It just had a real sort of heart and soul to it. And there was two guys that just kind of started a restaurant.
Yeah.
And, the amount I could tell that they really cared about the details and their staff and their customer. And we ended up becoming friends and they were just great people. And so I saw there was a different way to do, to do this. And I fell in love with it. And when we opened Nebraska Mini Mart, which is our fast casual it's on 1.5 acres, but it's, burgers, fries, shakes. Now it is, we'll probably talk about adversities, but when we pivoted that location during COVID, but so now it's, very casual, outdoors and still in the same, in the way that we do it. But so the risk is what you asked about. I think, when I looked at the economics of what they had built that space for and what it was doing sales wise, you don't have to go sort of all in if your product is outstanding and unique and different. And so I thought there was an opportunity to kind of scale it. And we've done some great concepts in high traffic areas and, we partnered with developers on, what we did at SPP with SPP down at Water Street. And we've been approached by some other developers too. I think that they are looking for, if you look at the new, areas that are sort of this live, work, play, you're not seeing a lot of the national players there. And I think the developers are being thoughtful about that because, people want things with a little more local, feel.
Flavor and soul. Absolutely. And it's interesting too, because so you came from the tech side and something you said is sort of, it's the tech model of Silicon Valley where you invest in the management, right? And you looked at these two guys are your partners now and we're like, okay, they're doing amazing work on so little. Can I help them grow, or can my sort of role help them be bigger and better?
Yeah, I think we've scaled. We've scaled and learned together. They, they knew about hospitality. I hope they would say that I, give a different perspective.
Right.
Just to scale and growth and being, supporting IT for some of these larger restaurant groups and seeing how they build their tech stack and how they build their ops team and just the organizational disciplines that I've been able to provide. I think it was I think they would say that has been a great match, and we've grown. We've grown together. So
it certainly has. And you said, 8 locations? How many employees, roughly, ballpark?
Now we have around 150, and then and then this year that will be probably up over 200 as we start to
sizable payroll for sure. All right, and so you mentioned the pandemic, and I was going to ask, what are some challenges and obstacles that you've had in your career as an entrepreneur, and how have you overcome that? Maybe it is the pandemic, but just in general, what are some of those challenges you faced?
Yeah, the pandemic was one. I think early on. I mean, I had another business that was sort of doing the same thing, where I had a partner. I mean, this is something that we talked about. We talk about I do a CEO coaching group called Vistage, and which is like business therapy. But I had a partnership that didn't end up panning out, and so that is like a professional divorce essentially.
Yeah.
So navigating through that, I think, was a challenging time, certainly for the best. COVID for me was scary personally, just because at the time Newgentek was probably 80% hospitality, the revenue mix.
Wow.
Was coming from the restaurant and hotel business. And so, and that's a recurring revenue business. And so the faucet kind of turned off, and when people started cutting back and closing, and we're in other markets, not Florida was a little more open, and so dealing with that was very challenging. The Fusionprep is 100% hospitality to the restaurants, and so and then the restaurants themselves, we had to do a huge pivot, and we had to close the units for a while. We combined them all. We had to let a lot of people go. It was a very challenging time. And so from my overall portfolio, outside of, a little real estate and investments, it's all heavily dependent on hospitality. But since then, I've remixed Newgentek to be less dependent on hospitality. And so now that makes up a significantly less piece of the portion of the business. And so I don't want that to happen again.
Yeah, definitely lesson learned there. And sometimes it's hard to do that, even though you have to. It's sometimes in a way you are who you are to a certain extent, right? Like I've said this example before, the Observer Media Group, the Business Observer covers the West Coast of Florida, but we have community newspapers in Sarasota and Manatee County that are hyper local. And a lot of that advertising was restaurants, hospitality. The arts community is very big in Sarasota. COVID happens, and there's no reason to take out ads to go see a show because there ain't no show. So
yeah. We talked about that a little bit at FIBA. I mean, journalism and media I follow the business very, very closely.
Yeah.
I love it. I probably would be doing that if I wasn't doing technology. So yeah, I love it. And obviously you got, you understand the challenges firsthand and the pivots that have to happen. But yeah, we need local journalism, especially.
Well, we have an opening for a Tampa reporter, Chon. So if this whole restaurant IT thing fails, I'm your guy.
I appreciate that.
Yes. All right. So go a little bit more, to, again, entrepreneur side, but the leadership side. What are some characteristics of good leaders, whether it's in the restaurants or Newgentek, that, what characteristics of your people stand out to you as leaders?
Yeah, I think, certainly being resilient. I mean, it is not for the faint of heart. Being it's lonely at the top. There's so many, analogies that can go with it. But, when I'm coaching the leaders in my organization, I try to, to tell them it's really important that you get comfortable with being uncomfortable. This is every day. It is something else. And so when I hear people say, man, it's just this one thing after another, I try to tell them, you got it. Like, that's exactly what it is. One thing after another. It's that's what we're paid to do, is sort of solve these problems and steer the ship and navigate it. So I look for someone that's, flexible, resilient, open-minded, collaborative. I think the best ideas, happen when there's disagreement, and that's how we get to the best outcome. And so all the opposite of those are probably things that I tolerate less. Yeah. Just is harder to work, right? Especially when we're trying to move the ball forward. It's you need people that are open-minded.
Well, especially the hospitality industry, right? I think the days are over of kind of that iron-fisted dictatorship type restaurant manager leadership thing. That's not the model that works today.
Absolutely. And that, that to that point, like that trickles down, downwards too. Like in the dining room, we always want to say yes to our guests, and figure out a way. And so if you're leading with the opposite of being, with an iron fist, or, you want to treat your team members with the same level of hospitality that you would, project in the dining room as well. Yeah.
Shows up for sure. What about on sort of that other side of, being an entrepreneur? Is there, something, an entity, a failure, a mistake that sort of stands out in your mind that you specifically learned from, that you recall as you've built your career?
I think over time, I've probably gotten better. You make mistakes with hiring, and I take those personally. It's it's just sometimes it's just not a good fit, and you misread something, or you think that someone may be a better fit than they end up being. Yes. And I probably, I will hold on probably longer than I need to. That has been something that I've had to get better at. And coaching in general, I mean, when they talk about coaching people, up or out, it's, knowing that you need to spend a significant amount of time with people to, get them acclimated to the culture and understand what your expectations are. And so patient, I guess they probably contradict themselves, but probably, patience, but then also, knowing when to turn the page too.
It's so hard, right? The cliche or the saying, hire slow, fire fast, right? It's true. But I think I'm just like you. When we've hired somebody that, all right, I think he's going to work out, and then he doesn't, I'm like, all right, I'm going to do, I did something with somebody where I did Feedback Friday, I called it. And every Friday I had a feedback session. And I thought the next week he's going to get it. The next week he's going to get it. And he wasn't the right person, right seat, right bus, none of it. And, it sounds like you've had that experience too, where you just keep saying, we're going to make it work. And then you realize it's not working.
And the hard thing is I've had the opposite happen, where it's like I will in my mind have written them off and saying like, this is not going to work. And then you end up having this heart to heart, and something clicks with them, and you're like, and then it's the best, it's the best fit ever. So it's certainly an art, not a science. Everyone's doing their best, I think.
So I was going to ask you about mentors, and you still talk about mentors, but I want to go back. You mentioned Vistage, business therapy. Give a plug to Vistage, because we've had some podcast guests who've had Vistage groups, and I know some of them pretty well over the years. What do you get out of that? Talk us through that, what that is and what you get out of that.
It's probably one of the most important things I think I've done professionally. I mean, so I'm not sure I could get a better plug than that, but to have that group and that sounding board of people that you can bounce challenges off and off of has been really helpful. And it's personal, it's professional, it's that forming these really deep relationships with a group of people that share the same problems. It's a little bit of misery loves company too, because you'll go there and you're like, oh, well, I'm not the only one that is not sleeping well this week. I'm in a room full of people with these same problems. But I wish I would have done it sooner. It felt like I was brave enough to ask for help and join, and I've gotten so much more out of it. And but you get to contribute as well. You get to help others, and that feels good too. So I do Vistage. I do CEO Council here in Tampa, which is another great group of peers and leaders, and so that has been helpful. Mentors overall, I try to be, again, with the open-mindedness. I think about, I have mentors in in my Vistage group that have been doing it a lot longer than me, but I try to look at everyone as as a mentor. And I like spending time around young people and speaking to college age kids, and I think there's a lot that I can learn or relearn and remember where I was at that time to that helps me. But I try to take away and be open to learning from everyone, because I think everyone has something to offer and teach.
Yeah. Well, especially the restaurant business, you're going to have a lot of demographics working for you, and it's good, as you said, to be open. And one last question on sort of overall the restaurants. You said locations 9 and 10. Give us we're about halfway through 2024. What's the rest of the year look like for the Proper House and kind of the brand overall?
Yeah, we're working on two projects in Trinity, which is where I grew up, and so kind of a full circle moment. My family still lives there, and so we have one in Lakeland right now, a Gallito in Lakeland, and so Trinity is kind of another outside of the the urban core and Tampa area, and so I think our plan is to see how those do out there with kind of a new audience and similar demographics to what we serve in some of the our units here, and then look at how we scale from there. Right, we have a handful of the fast casual. We have some ideas for some more full service restaurants as well, and we've been able to scale the team a lot as well. And so I think we're actively looking at the right opportunities for growth there.
Excellent. Well, before we totally let you go, I have 3 rapid fire questions for you. Okay, we're just gonna go right into it. What is a go-to song that you have that you'll sing in the car, in the shower, to your wife, whenever? What's a go-to song?
Let's see. Rapid fire too. That's so hard because we are such a musical house where we a lot of us play instruments. My kids,
your kids are young, right? So it's probably like poppy stuff, right?
12 and 9, yeah, but they're very into hip hop. It's a lot of Kendrick Lamar. Try to keep it on the clean version, but we do a lot of hip hop. So I'd say probably Kendrick Lamar is probably the popular one.
This will date me or old fuddy duddy me, but our son is 15 and he played a Kendrick Lamar, and I was like, he went right for the lyrics too, and I was like, what in the world is this? But then there was I Love Myself. There was one song I really liked. It's like one of his, right? You know the song I'm talking about?
Absolutely, yeah. It's a poppy, upbeat.
Yes.
Yeah.
I was like, crazy. I Love Myself. Like, I'm such a dork. Like, I'm a Bruce Springsteen guy. So, like, that's foreign to me. All right, so we got that 9 and 12 kids, hip hop. What is like same thing for a movie? What movie will you stop what you're doing to watch if it comes on?
For me, it is Willy Wonka and the Chocolate Factory, the original Gene Wilder. I had that VHS tape when I was a kid, and just wore it out. And my kids have been watching it now too. And so if it's on, I'll usually stop by and watch it. It's just it was ahead of its time, I think. The
Gene Wilder version is just way better. There's no comparison. Totally agree. Last question. Would you rather sail around the world or drive around North America in a van?
I think I would probably drive. Hopefully I wouldn't have to drive. I don't enjoy the task of driving, but I'd like to see the country. Yeah.
And you'd go with your kids too. Wow. Or would you? I should ask.
I would. Yeah, I would. I think that'd be a great memory.
Yeah. Awesome. Chon, thank you so much for joining us on the From the Corner Office podcast.
Thanks for having me, Mark. I appreciate it. It's great to catch up.
Thank you for listening to the Business Observer From the Corner Office podcast. I'm your host, Mark Gordy. This podcast was produced by Reed Corley of the Corley Company in Sarasota. To hear more episodes of From the Corner Office podcast, go to businessobserverfl.com.